I didn't know I was holding a monster's hand. If I had known, maybe I would have run. Maybe I would have let the shadows take him. But as the freezing rain of Bucharest hammered against my skin, soaking through my thin coat, all I saw was a trembling child, and all I felt was the sudden, terrifying instinct to die before I let anyone touch him. "Let go of the boy, Omega," the man in the leather jacket snarled, stepping over a puddle of dirty water. He held a serrated knife that caught the flicker of the dying street lamp. "You have no idea what that thing is." I didn't step back. I tightened my grip on the boy's icy little hand and raised my violin case like a shield. "I don't care what he is." I managed to choke out, my voice shaking not from cold, but from adrenaline. "You're not touching him." I was an idiot. I was a broke, scentless nobody standing in an alleyway against three armed men. But the moment those small fingers had curled around mine, my logic had shut off. The man laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "Suit yourself. We'll just take you both." He lunged. I flinched, bracing for the bite of the steel. I squeezed my eyes shut, pulling the child, Niku, he had whispered earlier, behind my legs. "I'm going to die here. I'm going to die in a gutter in Sector 4 and no one will even claim my body." But the blow never came. Instead, the air around us changed. It wasn't just the temperature dropping. It was something heavier. A sudden, crushing weight that pressed against my lungs, making it hard to breathe. The smell of ozone, ancient dust, and metallic blood flooded the alley, drowning out the stench of the garbage and the rain. The man who had lunged at me froze mid-step. His eyes, previously full of malice, blew wide with pure, primal terror. He dropped the knife. It clattered against the cobblestones with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. "Masters," he stammered, falling to his knees in the mud. The other two men dropped instantly, pressing their foreheads into the filth. "What?" My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't move. I couldn't. My boots were glued to the pavement. Behind me, little Niku let out a low, vibrating sound. It wasn't a cry. It sounded like a growl. "Stay behind me," I whispered to him, though my own legs were trembling. A low hum started, the sound of engines. Expensive engines. At the mouth of the alley, three matte black SUVs idled. They looked like predatory beasts crouching in the dark. The headlights cut through the rain, blinding me for a second. Then the doors opened. Three men stepped out. They didn't run. They didn't shout. They moved with the terrifying, fluid grace of predators who knew they were at the top of the food chain. The one in the center, tall with silver-streaked hair and a coat that cost more than my entire life's earnings, walked straight toward us. He didn't look at the kneeling thugs. He stepped on the hand of the man who had held the knife, crushing it into the pavement without even glancing down. The thugs screamed, but the sound was cut short as the second man, a massive wall of muscle with a scar cutting through his eyebrow, glared at him. Silence. Absolute, deadly silence. I swallowed hard, clutching my violin case. My scent blockers were cheap, but I prayed they were working. These weren't police. They were something else, something ancient. The leader stopped 5 feet away from me. Lord Cyprian. I recognized him from the tabloids. The CEO of Strigoi Holdings. The man who owned half of Romania. The man rumors said didn't age. Up close, he was devastating. His skin was pale as marble, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. But his eyes were the color of frozen blood. He looked at the thugs, then at me. Finally, his gaze lowered to the child hiding behind my legs. "Niku," Cyprian said. His voice was soft, velvet-wrapped steel. "Come here." The boy didn't move. He buried his face in my coat. Cyprian's eyes snapped back to me. The intensity of his stare made my knees buckle. I felt a phantom touch stroke down my spine, a violation of my personal space without him lifting a finger. "Step aside, Omega," he commanded. It wasn't a request. It was an alpha command. My instincts screamed at me to obey, to bare my neck, to submit. My body wanted to drop to the floor. No. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. I used the pain to anchor myself. "No," I whispered. The second man, the scarred giant, Valerius, stepped forward, a low snarl ripping from his chest. "Do you want to die, boy?" Move! He's terrified of you, I shouted back, my voice cracking. I raised my chin, trying to look taller than I was. Look at him. He's shaking. I'm not letting you take a child just so you can hurt him. Valerius looked stunned. Not angry, stunned, like a golden retriever had just barked at a wolf. The third man, the one leaning against the alley wall with a lazy, dangerous grace, Soren chuckled. The sound was dark and sensual. He thinks we're going to hurt him, Soren drawled, tilting his head. How novel. Cyprian raised a hand, silencing them both. He took one step closer to me. The air grew so cold my breath misted in front of my face. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. I could smell him now. Ice, expensive cologne, and iron. You think you are saving him? Cyprian asked, his voice a dangerous purr. Tell me, little violinist, do you know what you are protecting? A child, I insisted, though my hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my case. Cyprian's lips curled into a humorless smile. That child killed 4 of my best guards an hour ago because they tried to put him in a car seat. My breath hitched. I felt the small body pressed against my back. Killed? You're lying, I breathed. Am I? Cyprian's eyes drifted to Niku. Niku, show him. For a second, nothing happened. Then the boy peeked out from behind my coat. He looked at Cyprian, then up at me. His eyes weren't the scared brown I thought they were. They were glowing red. And when he opened his mouth, it wasn't to cry. He hissed at Cyprian, revealing needle-sharp fangs that were far too long for a 6-year-old. Oh, God. I stumbled back, hitting the brick wall. But I didn't push the boy away. My hand was still tangled in his wet hair. He's hungry, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Cyprian blinked. For the first time, the icy mask slipped. He looked at my hand, my bare human hand, resting on the feral fledgling's head. He hasn't fed in 3 days, Cyprian murmured, seemingly talking to himself. He is in a blood frenzy. He should have ripped your throat out the moment you touched him. The alpha stepped closer, invading my space completely. He wasn't looking at the boy anymore. He was looking at me. He inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring. Why aren't you dead? He whispered, his voice laced with a confusion that terrified me more than his anger. Why does he smell like you? Before I could answer, the adrenaline crash hit me. The cold, the fear, the alpha aura. It was too much. The edges of my vision went black. I swayed. I just wanted to go home, I mumbled, my violin case slipping from my numb fingers. The ground rushed up to meet me. I expected the hard, wet cobblestones. Instead, I landed in arms that felt like marble wrapped in silk. Strong, impossible. I looked up through half-lidded eyes to see Cyprian catching me. He wasn't looking at me with contempt anymore. He was looking at me like I was a puzzle he was desperate to solve. Valerius, Cyprian commanded, lifting me up into his arms as if I weighed nothing. Get the boy in the car. He won't fight if we have this. This? Valerius grunted, grabbing my violin case. What is he? I felt my head lull against Cyprian's chest. His heart wasn't beating. I don't know, Cyprian whispered against my hair as he carried me toward the black SUVs. But the boy chose him, and what the boy chooses, the coven keeps. The last thing I heard before the darkness took me was the sound of the rain and the boy, Niku, purring as he climbed into the car after us. The darkness didn't leave all at once. It receded like a tide, leaving behind a headache that throbbed at the base of my skull and a warmth I had never felt before. Warmth. That was wrong. I lived in a drafty studio apartment in Sector 4, where the radiator hissed but never heated. I fell asleep in the rain. I should be freezing. My fingers curled, expecting to scratch against wet cobblestones or the rough fabric of my cheap coat. Instead, they sank into velvet. Thick, plush, impossible velvet. I gasped, my eyes flying open. I wasn't in an alley. I was in a room that looked like it had been carved out of a Gothic cathedral and draped in modern sin. The ceiling vanished into shadows high above, a crystal chandelier gleaming faintly like captured stars. A fireplace large enough to roast an ox roared across the room, casting dancing shadows on walls lined with dark mahogany bookshelves. Where? I tried to sit up, panic spiking in my chest, but a weight on my chest pinned me down. A low, vibrating purr rumbled against my sternum. I looked down. Niku, the vampire child, was curled into a ball on top of me, his small hands gripping my shirt so tightly his knuckles were white. He was asleep, but the purr was constant, a warning engine idling in his small throat. He's alive. We're alive. I wouldn't move if I were you, little bird. The voice came from the shadows near the fireplace. It was smooth, dark, and tasted like expensive whiskey. I froze. My gaze snapped to the wingback chair by the fire. Soren, the diplomat, the one who had laughed in the alley. He was lounging with a terrifying elegance, holding a crystal glass filled with a thick, crimson liquid. He wasn't wearing his coat anymore, just a black silk shirt unbuttoned enough to show the expanse of his pale chest. He looked relaxed, but his eyes, gold, piercing, and predator-sharp, were locked on my throat. He nearly took Valerius's arm off when we tried to move him to his own bed, Soren drawled, taking a slow sip of the blood. He only settled when we put him on you. It seems you are his favorite pillow. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. Where am I? Strigoi Manor, a deeper voice answered. I flinched as Lord Cyprian stepped out of the shadows from the balcony. The storm raged behind the glass doors, lightning illuminating his harsh, beautiful features. He looked like a king contemplating an execution. You are in the nest of the coven you just insulted, Cyprian said, walking toward the bed. Every step he took felt like a hammer striking a bell inside my head. If you had any self-preservation, you would be trembling. I was trembling, but I pushed myself up on my elbows, careful not to disturb the boy. I didn't insult you, I rasped. I protected a child. There's a difference. Cyprian stopped at the foot of the bed. He loomed over me, his presence so overwhelming it felt like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. He leaned forward, bracing his hands on the mattress, trapping me. A child, he mocked softly. Florian, is it? That is what your wallet says. Tell me, Florian, does a child have the strength to tear a steel car door off its hinges? I stared at him. What? He destroyed the interior of my SUV because I drove too fast and you hit your head, Cyprian whispered. His gaze dropped to my forehead. He is feral. He is a fledgling with no sire to teach him control. He is a weapon. Cyprian's eyes narrowed. And yet, he sleeps on you like a kitten. Why? Why? I don't know, I whispered. And I didn't. I was a nobody, a violinist who played for tourists in the old town. I had no magic. I had no lineage. Maybe he just knows I'm not going to hurt him, unlike you. The air in the room shifted. It grew heavy, charged with static. Soren stood up from his chair, setting the glass down. The playful smirk was gone. Careful, Soren warned, his voice low. Cyprian didn't flinch. He just stared at me, searching for something. He leaned closer, his face inches from mine. I could feel the cold radiating off him, the death chill of a vampire. He inhaled. You smell of dust, he murmured, sounding almost disappointed. Cheap detergent, rain, and fear. So much fear. He tilted his head. But underneath that, there is a void. Why can't I smell your blood, Florian? My heart hammered. I take suppressants, like half the city. Suppressants hide heat, Cyprian countered. They do not hide life. You smell like a ghost. Suddenly, the door to the bedroom slammed open. Valerius marched in. The massive enforcer looked furious. His suit jacket was torn at the shoulder, revealing a glimpse of pale skin knitting itself back together. He's awake, Valerius growled. Good. Toss him out. Nika stirred on my chest, letting out a sharp hiss in his sleep. Valerius paused, eyeing the kid warily. We can't keep a human here, Cyprian, Valerius snapped. The council is already asking questions about the commotion in the alley. If they find out we have a stray human in the prime nest, they'll sanction us. Kill him or wipe his memory and dump him at the hospital. Kill him. The words hung in the air. Panic, cold and sharp, finally pierced through my shock. I wasn't a guest. I was a loose end. I scrambled backward, dislodging Niku. The boy woke up instantly, his eyes snapping open, glowing red. He snarled at Valerius, baring those needle teeth. No! I grabbed the boy's shoulder, pulling him back. Niku, stop! To everyone's shock, including mine, the boy listened. He stopped hissing, though he kept his glare fixed on the enforcer. I looked at Cyprian. You want me to leave? Fine, I'll leave. I swung my legs off the side of the bed. My head spun, but I forced myself to stand. I spotted my violin case sitting on a velvet armchair near the door. I'm taking my things, I said, my voice trembling, and I'm leaving. You can keep your creepy manor and your vampire politics. I stumbled toward the chair. You cannot leave, Cyprian said calmly, not even turning around. The boy has imprinted. If you leave, he will follow. And if he follows, he will be hunted by the hunters who killed his parents. Do you want his death on your conscience, Omega? I froze, my hand hovering over the handle of my violin case. Imprinted. That's not my problem, I lied. It was entirely my problem. My chest ached at the thought of leaving the kid. But I couldn't stay here. These men were monsters. Beautiful, rich monsters who discussed killing me like it was a weather report. I'm going, I insisted. I grabbed the violin case. In my haste, my clumsy, shaking fingers fumbled with the latch. I just wanted to check if the instrument was safe. It was my father's, the only thing of value I owned. I snapped the latch open too hard. Snap! A sharp sting sliced across my index finger. The jagged metal edge of the broken latch bit deep into my skin. Ah! I hissed, pulling my hand back. A single fat drop of bright red blood welled up on my fingertip. For a second, it was just a cut. Then the scent hit the air. It didn't smell like copper. It smelled like sugar, like burnt vanilla, ozone, and something electric, like the air right before a lightning strike. It was a scent so potent, so sweet, it made my own mouth water. The silence in the room shattered. Behind me, I heard a glass shatter as Soren dropped it. I spun around, clutching my bleeding finger to my chest. The three alphas weren't looking at me with annoyance anymore. They weren't discussing politics. They were frozen. Valerius's pupils had blown wide, swallowing the iris until his eyes were black pits of hunger. His chest heaved. Soren was gripping the back of the chair so hard the wood splintered under his fingers. He looked like a man who had been starving for a century and just saw a banquet. But it was Cyprian who terrified me. The head alpha turned slowly. His composure was gone. His face was a mask of raw, agonizing need. His fangs, long, white and lethal, slowly descended from his gums, clicking into place. That scent, Cyprian whispered. His voice wasn't velvet anymore. It was a growl that vibrated in the floorboards. He took a step toward me, then another. Niku, sensing the change, scrambled off the bed and stood in front of me, hissing. But even the boy looked back at my bleeding finger with a confused, hungry longing. What is happening? I backed up until I hit the door. You aren't a beta, Valerius groaned, his voice sounding like he was in physical pain. And you aren't just an omega. Cyprian stopped inches from me. He didn't look at my face. He looked at the single drop of blood threatening to fall from my finger to the carpet. Do not let that drop fall, Cyprian commanded, his voice trembling with restraint. If that blood touches the floor, I will not be able to stop them from tearing this room apart to get to the source. He looked up, meeting my eyes. The red in his irises was swirling, glowing brighter than the fire. Run, Florian, he choked out. Run to the bathroom and lock the door. Now. I didn't ask questions. I didn't wait to see if his eyes would turn back to human. I turned and scrambled for the heavy mahogany door of the bathroom. Behind me, a sound ripped through the air that I would never forget as long as I lived. It wasn't a scream. It was the sound of three apex predators losing a centuries-long battle for control. A wet, guttural snarl that vibrated in the base of my spine. Thump. Something heavy hit the wall where I had been standing a second ago. I threw myself into the bathroom, my boots sliding on the marble tile, and slammed the door shut. I twisted the lock, then the deadbolt. Then I backed away, my chest heaving, clutching my bleeding finger like it was a grenade. Bang! The door shuddered in its frame. I yelped, stumbling back until my legs hit the cold edge of the porcelain bathtub. "Open it!" a voice growled from the other side. It was Valerius, but it didn't sound like the man who had threatened me earlier. It sounded like a beast speaking through a mouthful of gravel. "Open the door, Omega, or I will tear it off its hinges." "Get away from me!" I screamed, my voice cracking. I looked around frantically. Towels. I needed towels. I grabbed a pristine, white hand towel from the rack and wrapped it tightly around my finger, squeezing hard to stop the blood flow. The white fabric bloomed red instantly. Why is it bleeding so much? It was just a scratch. Outside, the chaos was escalating. "Valerius, stand down!" That was Cyprian. His voice was strained, tight with effort. "Do not touch that door." "You smell it, Cyprian." Soren's voice joined the fray, high and breathless, bordering on manic. "Don't tell me you don't taste it. It's sweet. It's like God. It's like ambrosia." Something scratched at the bottom of the door. Fast, frantic scratching. "Niku." "Papa!" the boy wailed from the other side. "Papa, open! Scary! They are scary!" My heart broke. I took a step forward, my hand reaching for the lock. "Don't!" Cyprian roared. The command hit me like a physical slap. I froze, my hand hovering inches from the brass handle. "Do not open this door, Florian," Cyprian gasped. I could hear him moving, the sound of heavy furniture being dragged. Was he barricading them out, or me in? "If you come out here, we will kill you. We won't mean to, but we will drain you dry before your body hits the floor." I sank to the floor, my back against the bathtub, pulling my knees to my chest. The towel was soaked. The metallic tang of blood filled the small, steam-filled room. But Cyprian was right. Underneath the copper smell, there was something else. I sniffed the air. It was faint to me, but it was there. A scent like burnt sugar and ozone. Like the air before a thunderstorm, mixed with something undeniably biological. Is that me? I felt feverish. Sweat beaded on my forehead. My skin felt too tight, sensitive to the rub of my clothes. A dull ache started in my lower belly, a cramping, heavy heat that I hadn't felt in years. No, not now. Please, not now. The stress, the proximity to 3' alphas in a heightened state of rut, the blood loss. It was triggering a reaction my cheap suppressants couldn't handle. I was going into preheat. I don't feel good," I whispered, though I didn't think they could hear me. "He's slicking," Soren moaned from the other side. He must have been pressed right against the wood. "Cyprian, let me in. Just a taste. Just one lick. I promise I won't bite. I just need to taste it." "Get back, Soren," Cyprian snarled. Crack. A fist punched through the wood of the door, right at head height. I screamed, scrambling into the bathtub, curling into the farthest corner. Splinters rained down on the marble floor. Through the jagged hole, a hand reached in. Valerius's hand. Pale, large, veins bulging like cords under the skin. He didn't try to unlock the door. He just gripped the jagged wood, his fingers bleeding from the splinters, and inhaled. An eye appeared at the hole. It was entirely black. No white, no iris. Just a void of hunger. "Little bird," Valerius whispered, and the sound made my heat spike, sending a jolt of wetness between my thighs that was humiliatingly potent. "You have no idea what you are, do you?" "I'm nothing," I shouted, throwing a bottle of shampoo at the door. It bounced off harmlessly. "I'm just a violinist. Let me go." "A violinist," Soren laughed, the sound jagged and broken. His face appeared at the hole next to Valerius's hand. He looked wrecked. His hair was messy, his lips parted. "A violinist with the blood of the sanguine kings? Don't lie to us." "I don't know what that means," I cried. "It means," Cyprian's voice came from further back, steely and controlled, "that your blood is a narcotic to our kind. It means you are not descended from the worker lines. You are descended from the royals who used to rule us." Cyprian stepped into view of the hole. He shoved Valerius back with a force that shook the wall. Cyprian looked through the broken wood. His eyes were red, glowing. but he was holding on to his sanity by a thread. "Florian," he said, his voice dropping to that terrifyingly soft register. "Look at me." I looked. I couldn't help it. My Omega instincts were screaming at me to crawl to him, to bare my neck, to let him fix the ache in my belly. "You are bleeding," Cyprian said, "and you are entering heat. If you stay in there, the pheromones will concentrate. You will pass out. If I come out, you'll eat me," I countered, my teeth chattering. "We might," Cyprian admitted, the honesty more terrifying than any threat. "But if you stay in there, the boy will break the door down, and he has no control at all." As if on cue, the doorknob rattled violently. "Papa!" Niku shrieked, the sound turning into a feral hiss. "Open! Need!" I looked at my blood-soaked hand, then at the door. "What do?" I whispered, tears finally spilling over. "Pass the towel through the hole," Valerius demanded, his voice rough. "Give it to us." "Why?" "To buy you time," Soren answered breathlessly. "Give us the blood. If we taste it, it might calm the frenzy. Or it might drive us insane. But it's the only chance you have." It was a gamble. A horrific gamble. But Nick was throwing his body against the door now, the wood groaning. Trembling, I stood up. I walked to the door, stepping on the splinters. I held up the sodden, red towel. Through the jagged hole, Valerius's hand reached out, palm open, a silent beg. I hesitated. Then I placed the bloody cloth into his hand. Valerius snatched it. I heard the sound of fabric tearing. Then silence. Heavy, wet silence. I pressed my ear to the door, terrified. Had it worked? Or had I just fed the sharks a drop of blood in the water? "Gods," Soren whispered. It sounded like a prayer. "It's impossible," Valerius choked out. His voice sounded shattered. Not hungry anymore. Just broken. "What?" I whispered, my lips brushing the wood. "What is it?" There was a long pause. Then Valerius spoke, his voice trembling with an emotion I couldn't place. "Grief? Awe? This isn't just royal blood," Valerius whispered. "Cyprian, smell the undernote, the vanilla, the rain." "I smell it." Cyprian's voice was hollow. "It's him!" Valerius roared suddenly, the anger returning, but twisted into agony. "It's him! The Omega is playing a trick! He's using his scent!" His? Before I could ask who he was, the door didn't just crack. It exploded. Valerius didn't wait for permission. He tore the entire door off its hinges with one heave, sending wood flying across the bathroom. I screamed, covering my head as debris rained down. When I looked up, Valerius was standing in the doorway, the ruined door at his feet. He wasn't looking at my neck anymore. He was staring at my face, searching every inch of my features with a desperate, haunted intensity. He held the bloody towel in one hand, bringing it to his nose. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice breaking. "And why do you taste exactly like the mate we buried 5 years ago?" The darkness didn't stay black. It turned red. I wasn't in the bedroom anymore. I wasn't Florian, the broke violinist. I was someone else. Someone taller, stronger, but paralyzed with fear. I was standing in a garden covered in snow. The air smelled of pine and betrayal. "Why?" I tried to ask, but the voice wasn't mine. It was deeper, smoother. Adrian's voice. A figure stood in front of me, shrouded in a hunter's cloak. I couldn't see the face, but I saw the hand. It held a silver dagger curved like a crescent moon. On the ring finger, a heavy silver signet ring glinted in the moonlight. A ring carved with the crest of a two-headed wolf. I know that ring. Pain exploded in my chest, cold, searing steel sliding between my ribs. I gasped, choking on blood that wasn't there. The figure leaned close, twisting the blade. "Because monsters don't deserve happy endings," the killer whispered. I screamed, "Breathe! Florian, breathe!" The scream tore out of my throat, raw and terrified, shattering the silence of the bedroom. My eyes flew open, but the image of the silver dagger was burned into my retinas. I thrashed, trying to protect my chest, trying to stop the blade. Clink. My wrist jerked, stopped short by something soft but unyielding. I was bound. Thick, black silk ropes tethered my wrists to the mahogany headboard. My ankles were secured to the foot of the bed. I was spread-eagled, displayed like a sacrifice on an altar of dark sheets. "Let me go!" I yelled, bucking my hips. The movement sent a jolt of friction through my heat-sensitive skin, forcing a humiliating gasp from my lips. "Stop fighting," a voice commanded. Valerius. He was looming over me, his shirt discarded, his chest bare and pale as marble. He looked wrecked. His hair was wild, his eyes rimmed with red, and he was breathing heavily as if he had just run a marathon. He placed a heavy hand on my sternum, pinning me to the mattress. His skin was fever hot, a reaction to my scent, or his own rage. "You nearly stopped breathing," Valerius growled, his face inches from mine. "You went under for 10 minutes. We thought the blood was too strong." I stared up at him, my chest heaving. The taste of Soren's blood was still thick on my tongue. Dark chocolate and iron. It buzzed in my veins, a low-grade hum that made everything sharper, brighter, louder. "The knife!" I panted, the memory leaking out of me like poison. It was silver, curved, like a moon. Valerius froze. His hand on my chest tightened until it bruised. From the foot of the bed, Cyprian stepped into the light. He looked immaculate, terrifyingly composed, but his hands were clenched at his sides. "A karambit," Cyprian whispered. "Only the hunters of the wolf clan use them." He walked to the side of the bed. He didn't touch me. He looked at me with a mixture of awe and horror. "We never found the weapon," Cyprian said softly. "Adrian was found in the garden with a stab wound, but the blade was gone." "How did you see it, Florian?" "I saw it because you drugged me," I spat, tugging at the silk restraints. "You fed me vampire blood and forced his memories into my head. Get these things off me." "We cannot," Soren said from the other side of the room. He was leaning against the wall, looking pale. He was holding his wrist where he had cut himself. "The blood bond is fresh. If we untie you now, your heat will drive you to attack us. You will try to mate with us, Florian. And we are barely holding on as it is." I looked at them. Really looked at them. They weren't just watching me. They were predators on the edge of a cliff. Valerius's pupils were blown wide. He was sweating. The scent in the room, my scent, mixed with Soren's blood, was driving them insane. "I don't want to mate with you," I hissed, though my body betrayed me. A cramp of desire twisted low in my belly, making my toes curl. "I hate you. You kidnapped me." "We saved you," Cyprian corrected coolly. "And now you are hallucinating our dead lover's murder." He leaned down, placing a hand on the mattress next to my head. "Tell me about the hand holding the knife," Cyprian demanded. "Did you see a face?" "No," I lied. I had seen something. The ring. The two-headed wolf. I knew that ring. I had seen it in my own apartment. I had seen it on the hand of the only family I had left. My brother, Radu. "No. It's impossible. Radu is a mechanic. He's not a hunter. But the memory was visceral. The ring was identical." "You're lying," Cyprian murmured. He didn't need a lie detector. He could hear my heartbeat. "Your pulse jumped. You recognized something." "I didn't," I insisted, tears pricking my eyes. "I just want to go home to Niku." "Niku is guarding the door," Valerius grunted. "He won't let the staff in to clean up the mess you made in the bathroom. He thinks we're torturing you." "Aren't you?" I shot back. Valerius flinched. The hurt in his eyes was raw and confusing. "We are trying to understand," Valerius whispered, his voice cracking. "Adrian was... he was everything to us. If you are his reincarnation, if his soul is in you..." "I am not him," I shouted, the anger finally boiling over. "I am Florian. I like cheap coffee and I play the violin badly, and I am not your dead boyfriend. Stop looking for him in me." The silence that followed was deafening. Cyprian stood up straight. He looked at Soren, then at Valerius. A silent communication passed between them. "He doesn't know," Soren said softly. "Know what?" I demanded. Cyprian walked to the window, looking out at the storm. "Adrian wasn't our mate," Cyprian said. I blinked. "What?" "He wasn't our fated mate," Cyprian clarified, turning back to face me. The lightning outside cast his shadow long across the room. "He was a guard." A beta who we grew fond of. We loved him, yes. But the bond, the pull, the heat you're feeling right now? Cyprian walked back to the bed. He looked down at me, his eyes glowing with a terrifying intensity. We never felt this with him, Cyprian whispered. We never felt the madness. We never felt the biological imperative to burn the world down just to hear him purr. My breath hitched. But Valerius said I tasted like him. You taste like the prophecy, Valerius corrected, his voice rough. He reached out, his fingers hovering over my cheek, trembling. The scrolls speak of a sanguine Omega, a creature born once every 1,000 years whose blood can unite the coven and break the curse of sterility. He touched me then, just a brush of his knuckles against my jaw. Currents of electricity shot through me, so strong my back arched off the mattress. Adrian tried to fake it, Valerius murmured, his eyes tracking the movement of my throat. He took potions to smell like you. He tried to be the prophecy to gain power. That's why he was killed. The hunters knew he was a fraud. Valerius leaned in, his nose brushing against my scent gland. I froze. But you... Valerius inhaled, a shudder racking his massive frame. You aren't faking, Florian. You are the real thing. You are the monster we've been waiting for. I stared at him, horror dawning on me. I wasn't a replacement. I was the original. The thing Adrian had died trying to imitate. If I'm the real thing, I whispered, my voice trembling, then the people who killed him are coming for you, Cyprian finished grimly. Suddenly, a siren blared through the manor. Not a fire alarm, a perimeter breach alarm. The lights in the room flickered and died, plunging us into red emergency lighting. They're here, Soren said, pushing off the wall, his face hardening into a mask of lethal grace. Cyprian moved instantly. He slashed his hand through the air, and the silk ropes binding me disintegrated into dust. Magic. Get up, Cyprian commanded. We are under attack. I scrambled up, my legs weak, clutching the silk sheets to my chest. Who is it? I asked, though I felt a sick, sinking feeling in my gut. Cyprian pulled a tablet from the bedside table. He tapped the security feed. He turned the screen toward me. Do you know this man, Florian? On the grainy black and white screen, a man was standing at the iron gates of the manor. He was holding a megaphone in one hand and a UV grenade launcher in the other. He was wearing a heavy coat, and on his hand, visible even in the pixelated footage, was the ring, the two-headed wolf. I stopped breathing. It was Radu, my brother, and he wasn't alone. Behind him stood an army of men in tactical gear. Florian! Radu's voice crackled over the intercom, echoing through the master suite. I know you're in there. Step away from the monsters, Flori. Step away or I'll burn the whole place to the ground. I looked at Cyprian, then at the screen. My brother wasn't a mechanic. He was the executioner from my dream. I couldn't look away from the screen. Radu's face, twisted with a fanaticism I had never seen over our Sunday morning coffees, burned into my retinas. He lied. Every time he said he was working late at the garage. Every time he came home smelling of grease and metal. It wasn't oil. It was gun oil. It was the scent of the hunt. Boom. The world tilted. A concussion grenade detonated against the front gates, the shock wave vibrating through the limestone walls of the manor. The tablet in Cyprian's hand cracked. He's breaching the perimeter, Valerius roared, his voice dropping into that guttural, non-human register. He spun toward me, his fangs fully extended, slobbering with rage. I will rip his head off, Florian. I don't care if he is your blood. Wait, I screamed, scrambling off the bed. My legs were like jelly, the heat still humming in my veins, making the room spin. He's my brother. Let me talk to him. He thinks he's saving me. He is not saving you, Soren hissed, moving with a blur of speed to block the bedroom door. He looked terrifying. His eyes were black pools, his claws lengthening into obsidian daggers. He is carrying UV rounds, Florian. Those aren't for rescue. Those are for extermination. He intends to kill us and cleanse you. Cleanse me. The word made bile rise in my throat. Suddenly, the door Soren was guarding flew open. Papa! Niku launched himself into the room, screeching. The boy was covered in drywall dust. He scrambled up my legs, burying his face in my stomach. He was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. "Bad light," Niku sobbed. "Burning light outside." Cyprian cursed, a sharp, ancient word that sounded like glass breaking. He strode to the window, risking a glance. "They are using ultraviolet floodlights," Cyprian reported, jerking the heavy velvet curtains shut just as a searing white beam sliced across the glass. Smoke curled from the fabric where the light touched it. "If that light touches Niku, he will ash in seconds. We cannot fight them in the open." He turned to me. The look on his face wasn't the arrogance of a billionaire. It was the desperation of a general losing a war. "We have to get to the panic room in the cellar," Cyprian commanded. "Valerius, take point. Soren, rear guard. I will carry the Omega." "I can walk," I protested, though clutching Niku made my knees buckle. "You are in heat and your brother is at the door with a flamethrower," Cyprian snapped, grabbing my arm. "You are not walking." He didn't wait for my permission. He hauled me against his chest, shielding my body with his own. I instinctively wrapped my arms around Niku, sandwiching the terrified child between us. We burst out of the bedroom into the grand hallway. It was chaos. The alarm was deafening. Red emergency lights bathed the corridor in the color of fresh blood. Dust fell from the ceiling as another explosion rocked the foundation. "Florian!" Radu's voice, amplified by the megaphone, echoed through the halls, sounding closer now. "I know they have you brainwashed. Come out! I brought the cure!" "The cure," I shuddered. "Keep your head down," Valerius barked from the front. He kicked open the double doors leading to the grand staircase. We stepped out onto the mezzanine overlooking the foyer, and we froze. The front doors of the manor were gone, blown inward. Standing in the debris, bathed in the harsh, blinding glow of portable UV floodlights, stood a phalanx of men in tactical gear. And in the center, holding a rifle that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie, was Radu. He looked up. His eyes locked onto mine instantly. "Flori!" he shouted, relief washing over his face. Then his gaze shifted to Cyprian, holding me. The relief turned to pure, unadulterated hatred. "Get your hands off him, leech!" Radu raised the rifle. "Down!" Cyprian roared. He threw himself backward, taking me and Niku with him to the floor. Hiss crack. A beam of concentrated UV light seared through the air, where Cyprian's head had been a microsecond ago. It hit the portrait on the wall behind us. The canvas didn't just burn, it disintegrated. "Radu, stop!" I screamed, struggling against Cyprian's hold. "Stop it! You're going to kill the kid!" "That's not a kid, Flori!" Radu yelled back, racking the slide of his rifle. "That's a parasite. It's been feeding on you. I can smell the bond from here." "Valerius, cover fire!" Cyprian ordered, pressing me flat against the cold marble floor. Valerius didn't have a gun. He didn't need one. He ripped a marble bust from its pedestal and hurled it over the balcony with the force of a cannonball. Screams erupted below as the heavy stones smashed into the tactical team. "Go!" Cyprian hauled me up, dragging me toward the servants' stairs. "No!" I dug my heels in. I couldn't run. If I ran, Radu would chase us. He would burn this whole place down. He would kill Valerius. He would kill Niku. I broke free from Cyprian's grip. "Florian!" Soren lunged for me, but I was faster. The vampire blood in my system gave me a surge of unnatural agility. I ran to the railing of the balcony. I stood up, fully exposed. "Stop firing!" I screamed, my voice echoing over the chaos. Below me, 20 rifles hesitated. Radu signaled his men to hold. He stepped forward, stepping over the debris. He looked up at me, his face pleading. "Flori, baby, please," he begged. "Come down. I have the extraction team ready. We can fix you. We can scrub their filth off your mind." I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the love in his eyes, but I also saw the fanaticism, the absolute certainty that he was right. Then I looked at the monsters. Cyprian was hovering behind me, ready to take a bullet for me. Niku was peeking through the banisters, shaking, looking at me like I was the only safe thing in the universe. Valerius was bleeding from a UV burn on his arm, but he hadn't made a sound. Radu wanted to fix me. The Coven just wanted me to survive. "You lied to me," I said, my voice trembling but loud. "You killed Adrian." Radu's face hardened. He was a collaborator. He deserved it, just like them. He raised his rifle again. He aimed it not at me, but at Cyprian, behind me. "Step aside, Florian." "No," I whispered. I didn't step aside. I opened my violin case. I hadn't dropped it. Even in the chaos, I had clung to it like a lifeline. I flipped the latches. "What are you doing?" Radu asked, confused. I pulled out the bow. It wasn't just wood. It was Pernambuco wood, tipped with silver, an antique repair I had made years ago. "I'm protecting my pack," I said. The word hung in the air. Pack. Radu's face twisted in disgust. "You're sick. They've turned you." He pulled the trigger. Time slowed down. I saw the muzzle flash. I saw the UV round spinning toward us. I didn't think. I reacted. I didn't use the bow as a weapon. I used my voice. A scream tore from my throat. But it wasn't a human scream. It was a harmonic frequency, a sound so high, so pure, and so devastating that it shattered the crystal chandelier above us. "No!" The sound wave hit the UV round in midair. The bullet didn't just stop, it shattered. The force of my voice slammed into the hunters below like a physical wall. Men were thrown backward. The floodlights exploded in showers of sparks. Radu was knocked off his feet, his rifle skittering across the floor. Silence fell. Absolute ringing silence. I stood panting at the railing, my throat burning. Behind me, Cyprian gasped. "The Omega voice," he whispered, sounding terrified. "The voice of command." I looked down at my hands. They were glowing, faintly, softly, but they were glowing gold. Radu pushed himself up from the debris. He looked up at me, blood trickling from his nose. His eyes were wide with horror. "You're not my brother," Radu whispered. "You're one of them." He reached for a secondary weapon on his belt, a grenade. "Kill it," Radu screamed to his men. "Kill the monster!" The metallic ting of the pin hitting the marble floor echoed louder than the sirens. Radu's arm moved in a blur. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look at me with regret anymore. He looked at me like I was a rabid dog that needed to be put down for the safety of the neighborhood. He lobbed the grenade. It wasn't a standard frag. It was a canister painted bright silver with a biohazard symbol, a UV phosphorus incendiary. "Down!" Cyprian didn't scream it. He growled it, a sound so deep it rattled my molars. I tried to move, but my limbs were lead. The Omega voice had drained me instantly, leaving me dizzy and swaying. I watched the canister arc through the air in slow motion, spinning end over end, heading straight for the balcony where Niku was cowering. "Niku," I choked out, reaching for the boy. I wasn't fast enough. But Cyprian was. The Ancient Alpha didn't dive for cover. He didn't run. He threw himself forward, grabbing me with one arm and Niku with the other, and spun us around. He slammed us into the corner of the wall, shielding us with his own body. He turned his back to the explosion. Boom! The world turned white. The heat was instantaneous, a wave of searing, dry fire that sucked the moisture right out of the air. The concussion wave hit Cyprian's back with the force of a freight train. He didn't scream. He grunted, a wet, sickening sound of air being forced out of crushed lungs, and slammed into me, pinning me against the wall. I squeezed my eyes shut, clutching Niku's head to my chest, screaming silently as debris rained down on us. The smell hit me next. Not ozone, not cordite, burning flesh. "Cyprian?" I whimpered, the ringing in my ears deafening. The blast subsided, leaving only the crackle of chemical fire eating through the expensive rugs. Cyprian didn't move. He was a dead weight against me, heavy and scorching hot. "Cyprian, get off!" I gasped, panic clawing at my throat. "We have to move." He slid down slowly, his legs giving out. As he slumped to the floor, I saw his back. I slapped a hand over my mouth to stop the bile from rising. His coat was gone. His shirt was gone. His skin, the pale marble skin of his back, was a ruin of charred black and sizzling red. Shards of silver shrapnel were embedded deep in his spine, glowing faintly with UV residue. It wasn't healing. Vampire skin should knit together in seconds. This was festering. "Masters!" Soren was there instantly, his face a mask of horror. He grabbed Cyprian's arm, hauling him up. Cyprian's head lolled back. His eyes were open, but glassy. Red foam bubbled at the corner of his lips. "Go!" Cyprian wheezed, blood spraying from his mouth onto my shirt. "Get the Omega out!" Below us, in the smoke-filled foyer, Radu was coughing. "Check the bodies!" my brother shouted, his voice distorted by the ringing in my ears. "If they're twitching, double tap them." Something snapped, not in me, in Valerius. The enforcer had been thrown against the wall by the blast, but he was standing now. He looked at Cyprian's ruined back. Then he looked over the railing at Radu. Valerius didn't make a sound. No roar, no threat. He just fell. He vaulted over the railing, dropping 20 feet into the smoke. He landed in a crouch directly in front of the tactical team. "Open fire!" Radu screamed. They fired. Bullets sparked off Valerius's skin like hail on a tank. He didn't care. He moved faster than my eyes could track. Rip. A scream cut short. A soldier went flying across the room, in 2 pieces. It was a massacre. Valerius was a blur of violence, tearing through the armor and flesh of the men who had hurt his pack leader. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. "Valerius, no!" I screamed, leaning over the railing. "Don't kill him! Don't kill Radu!" Valerius ignored me. He backhanded a soldier, crushing his helmet, and marched toward my brother. Radu was scrambling back, trying to reload his rifle, terror finally breaking through his fanaticism. "We have to go, Florian," Soren yelled, grabbing my arm. He had Cyprian's massive arm draped over his shoulder, dragging the semi-conscious Alpha toward the servant's door. "Cyprian is dying. The silver is in his heart." I looked at Valerius about to slaughter my brother. I looked at Cyprian, bleeding black blood onto the floor, dying because he saved me. I can't save them both. My heart fractured. "I'm sorry, Radu," I whispered. I turned my back on my brother. I grabbed Niku's hand and ran after Soren, into the darkness of the servants' passage. We stumbled down the narrow stone stairs, the sounds of slaughter fading behind us. We didn't stop until we hit the heavy iron door of the panic room in the cellar. Soren punched in a code. The door hissed open. We collapsed inside. It was a sterile, concrete bunker lined with weapons and blood bags. Soren lowered Cyprian onto a metal medical table. "Help me!" Soren shouted, ripping open a pack of gauze. "Put pressure on the wound." I shoved Niku into a corner. "Stay there. Don't look." I ran to the table. Up close, the damage was worse. The silver shrapnel was fizzing, burning into Cyprian's flesh like acid. "Why isn't he healing?" I cried, pressing the gauze into the wet, hot mess of his back. My hands were slick with his blood. So much blood. "Silver nitrate," Soren cursed, his hands shaking as he tried to dig a piece of metal out with forceps. "It acts as a necrotic. It stops the regeneration." And he took a massive dose to the spine. Cyprian groaned, his back arching off the table. His hand shot out, gripping my wrist with bruising force. "Florian!" he rasped. His eyes were unfocused, the red glow dimming to a dull, dying gray. "I'm here," I sobbed, using my other hand to brush the sweat-damp hair off his forehead. "I'm here. You're going to be okay." "Leave," Cyprian whispered. "Valerius will kill everyone. If you stay, you will see what we really are." "I don't care," I shouted. "You saved Niku. You saved me." "Because you are mine," Cyprian choked out. His body seized. A terrible rattling gasp tore through his chest. Then he went still. The hand gripping my wrist went slack. "No," I whispered. "His heart stopped," Soren said, dropping the forceps. He sounded dead. "He's gone. The poison reached the core." "No!" I screamed. I grabbed Cyprian's face. It was cooling rapidly. "He can't be dead. The villain doesn't die. He's supposed to be the monster I escape, not the martyr who dies for me." "Fix him!" I yelled at Soren. "You're vampires. Do something." "We can't," Soren shouted back, tears streaming down his face. "Only a prime sanguine transfer could purge that much silver, and we don't have—" He stopped. He looked at me. He looked at the blood on my hands. Cyprian's blood. And I realized, I am the sanguine transfer. "My blood," I whispered. You said my blood is sanguine royal. You said it's a narcotic. It's too dangerous, Soren warned, stepping back. Florian, if you feed him directly from the source while he is in a trauma state, he will drain you. He won't be able to stop. He will kill you. I looked at Cyprian's still face. I remembered the way he had held me in the rain, the way he had looked at Niku. I didn't hesitate. I climbed onto the metal table, straddling Cyprian's waist. I ignored the blood soaking into my jeans. Florian, don't! Soren lunged. Back off! I used the voice again. It was weaker this time, just a whisper of power, but it was enough to make Soren freeze against the wall. I leaned down over Cyprian. I brushed my thumb over his pale, cold lips. Come back to me, you arrogant bastard, I whispered. I bit my own tongue, hard, until the metallic taste filled my mouth. Then I kissed him. I pushed my blood into his mouth. For a second, nothing happened. It was like kissing a corpse. Then, crack. Cyprian's chest heaved. A gasp ripped through him, sounding like he was inhaling the entire room. His eyes flew open. They weren't gray. They weren't even red. They were violet, the color of royalty, the color of a god. His hands flew up, locking onto the back of my head, trapping me against his mouth. He didn't just drink. He devoured. His fangs descended, grazing my lip, lapping at the blood with a hunger that was terrifying, primal, and overwhelming. I felt a pull in my chest, not just physical, but spiritual, a tether snapping into place. Mine. His mind roared into mine, loud enough to make me dizzy. Mate, life, mine. He sat up, taking me with him, flipping us so I was pinned beneath him on the metal table. He tore his mouth from mine, gasping, his face healing before my eyes. The burns on his chest vanished. The color returned to his skin. He looked down at me. He looked deranged with power. You fed me, he whispered, his voice vibrating with a new, terrifying resonance. He leaned down, his fangs brushing the pulse point of my neck. Now, Cyprian growled, I am going to kill everything that tried to take you from me. The door to the panic room shuddered. Valerius was outside, and he wasn't knocking. The steel did not just shudder, it screamed. The reinforced locking mechanism groaned as someone hit it with the force of a battering ram. Cyprian didn't flinch. He didn't even look at the door. He was still looming over me, his violet eyes burning with a terrifying, drug-like ecstasy, his lips stained with my blood. He looked like a fallen angel who had just clawed his way back out of hell. Bang! Metal tore. A hand, bloody, mangled, and terrifyingly strong, punched through the 3-inch steel plate. Cyprian! Valerius's voice roared from the other side. It wasn't a name. It was a sound of pure agony. He thought his alpha was dead. He was tearing the world apart to get to the body. Let him in, Cyprian whispered against my skin. He didn't shout. He didn't move. He simply exerted his will. The heavy magnetic locks disengaged with a hiss. The door swung open. Valerius stood there. He was unrecognizable. His tactical vest was shredded. He was covered from head to toe in blood that wasn't his. He was panting, his chest heaving like a dying engine, his eyes wild and unfocused. He stepped into the room, ready to kill whatever he found. Then he saw us. He saw Cyprian sitting on the table, alive, glowing with power. He saw me underneath him, my shirt torn, my neck exposed. Valerius stopped. The rage drained out of him so fast it looked like he might collapse. He fell to his knees, his hands shaking as they hovered over the floor. You are alive, Valerius choked out. I am reborn, Cyprian corrected. His voice had a double tone to it now, human speech layered over a deep, subsonic growl. Cyprian slid off the table, pulling me up with him. He didn't let go of my waist. He held me like I was the source of gravity in the room. The Omega brought me back, Cyprian said, looking at Valerius. He fed me the lineage. Valerius looked at me. The hatred was gone. The distrust was gone. In its place was a terrifying, religious awe. You fed him, Valerius whispered, crawling forward on his knees until he was at my feet. He didn't touch me. He looked afraid to touch me. You saved the king? I saved Cyprian, I snapped, my voice shaking. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving me trembling. And if you touch my brother upstairs, I'll kill you myself. Valerius flinched. He looked down at his bloody hands. The brother is gone, Valerius rasped. He fled when the tactical team fell. I let him run, because he smells like you. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Radu was alive. We need to leave, Soren said from the corner. He was shielding Niku's eyes, but he looked pale. Cyprian, your energy signature is off the charts. The council sensors will pick this up. If they see a violet-eyed alpha, they will nuke this entire sector just to contain you. Let them come, Cyprian snarled. No! I grabbed Cyprian's face, forcing him to look at me. No more fighting. Look at us. We're a mess. We need to hide, not start a war. Cyprian stared at me. The violet fire in his eyes dimmed slightly, replaced by that intense, singular obsession. You commanded me, he murmured, sounding delighted. You commanded the Alpha. I'm commanding you to get us to safety, I said firmly. Cyprian smirked. It was a dark, wicked thing. As you wish, my queen. We moved through the back tunnels, ancient escape routes built by the Coven centuries ago. The air was damp and cold, but I was burning up. The heat, my suppression was gone. The stress, the blood sharing, the proximity to 3 alphas, it was hitting me like a tidal wave. I stumbled, my knees buckling. Florian! Valerius caught me before I hit the dirt. His touch was electric, painfully good. I whimpered, clutching his torn shirt. He is crashing, Soren noted, his voice tight. The bond with Cyprian is open, but it is unbalanced. He is tethered to one, but the other 2 are pulling at him. It is tearing his biology apart. Cyprian stopped. He turned around, the flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. We have to finish it, Cyprian said. I looked up, sweat dripping into my eyes. Finish what? The triad bond, Cyprian said. He stepped closer, the space in the tunnel shrinking. You fed me. You are mine. But Valerius and Soren are part of my soul. If you do not accept them, if you do not let them claim you, the imbalance will kill you. Claim me, I laughed, a hysterical, wet sound. You mean bite me? I mean bind us, Valerius whispered. He was holding me so gently despite the violence he was capable of. Florian, look at me. I looked. I accused you of being a ghost, Valerius said, his voice breaking. I treated you like a curse, but you are the only real thing I have ever felt. Please, let me fix this. Let me take the pain away. It wasn't a demand, it was a beg. I looked at Soren. The playful diplomat was silent, watching me with a longing that made my chest ache. I looked at Cyprian, the king I had resurrected, and I realized something. I wasn't scared of them anymore. I didn't want to run. I wanted to own them. Fine, I whispered, tilting my head back, exposing the vulnerable curve of my neck. But get one thing straight. I glared at Valerius, then Soren, then Cyprian. You don't own me, I hissed, my Omega instincts flaring to meet their alpha dominance. I saved you. I bled for you. If I do this, I own you. Cyprian's eyes flared violet. A growl ripped through the tunnel, vibrating in the damp walls. Yes, Cyprian breathed. Yes, you do. It wasn't gentle. Cyprian moved first. He didn't bite my neck. He grabbed my hand, the one that had held the violin, the one that had saved Niku, and brought it to his mouth. He sank his fangs into my wrist, right over the pulse. Flash. A connection slammed into my mind. Power, ice, royalty. I gasped, my back arching. Valerius was next. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling my scent like it was oxygen. Mine, he groaned. He bit down on the scent gland. Flash, fire, protection, devotion. The pain was sharp, exquisite, turning instantly into a rush of endorphins that made my knees give out completely. I would have fallen if Soren hadn't caught me. Soren didn't bite. He kissed the tear track on my cheek. Then he leaned down and bit the other side of my neck. Flash. love, balance, eternity. The three connections slammed together in my head. It wasn't just a bond, it was a network. I could feel Cyprian's heartbeat in my chest. I could feel Valerius's rage settling into a protective hum. I could feel Soren's relief, and they could feel me. They could feel my fear, my hope, and the fierce, protective love I had for the little boy watching from the shadows with wide eyes. The sensation was overwhelming. It was too much light, too much heat, too much everything. My vision went white. I got him, Valerius's voice echoed in my mind, not my ears. I slumped against him, the world fading. I floated in the bond for a moment, warm and safe. But then, a new voice cut through the connection. A voice that didn't belong to Cyprian, Valerius, or Soren. It was cold, ancient, and it was coming from inside the bond. So, the sanguine line has finally returned. I jolted, my eyes snapping open in the real world. I was being carried. We were outside now in the cold night air of the forest, the tunnel exit. Did you hear that? I whispered, clutching Valerius's shirt. Hear what? Valerius asked, looking down at me with pure adoration. The voice, I stammered. In the bond. Someone else is there. Cyprian stopped dead in his tracks. The violet in his eyes vanished, replaced by a terrified black. He looked at the moon. That is impossible, Cyprian whispered. Unless... He looked at me, horror dawning on his face. Unless the person who killed Adrian wasn't a hunter, Cyprian said, his voice trembling. Florian, the voice. Did it sound like my father? Did it sound like my father? The question hung in the cold night air, fragile as glass. Before I could answer, Cyprian screamed. It wasn't a scream of pain. It was the sound of a soul being ripped in half. He fell to his knees in the dirt, clutching his head. The violet light in his eyes flickered, strangled by a milky dead white. The veins in his neck turned black, pulsating with a rhythm that wasn't his own. Get back! Valerius roared, shoving me behind him. Soren, grab Niku! Run! It's him, Soren gasped, horror washing over his face. The tyrant, he's trying to surface. He's using the sanguine energy to claw his way back into a body. Cyprian's head snapped up. He wasn't looking at me with love anymore. He was looking at me like I was food. Delicious, Cyprian said, but the voice was wrong. Raspy, ancient, echoing from a grave. The blood of the queens. I haven't tasted this in 1,000 years. He lunged. Cyprian, possessed by his dead father, moved faster than Valerius could react. He backhanded the massive enforcer, sending Valerius crashing through a pine tree. He grabbed me by the throat. His grip was iron. He lifted me off the ground, my boots dangling inches above the moss. Florian! Niku screamed from somewhere in the dark. No! I choked, clawing at Cyprian's hand. Cyprian! Fight him! Cyprian is gone, the tyrant sneered, leaning in to sniff my neck. I am the Coven. I am the Eternal. And you are merely the vessel I need to solidify this form. Click. A blinding white light flooded the clearing. Drop him, you undead freak. Radu. My brother stood at the edge of the tree line, flanked by the remnants of his tactical team. They weren't using guns this time. They were setting up a perimeter of heavy UV cannons. Radu, don't, I rasped. It's not him. It looks like him to me, Radu shouted. Fire the main cannon. Burn it out of existence. The massive UV cannon whirred to life, glowing with the intensity of a miniature sun. I looked at Cyprian's face. Beneath the milky white of the possession, I saw a flicker of panic. I saw my alpha. He was trapped inside his own mind, fighting a ghost. If Radu fired that cannon, Cyprian would turn to ash. The tyrant would die, yes, but so would the man I loved. No. I wasn't going to lose him. I hadn't survived the alley, the heat, and the betrayal just to watch him die now. I stopped struggling against the chokehold. I reached out. I didn't claw at his hand. I cupped his face. The tyrant paused, confused by the tenderness. You want my blood? I whispered, my voice trembling. Then take it. I didn't wait for him to bite. I surged my own power, the sanguine royal blood that Valerius said was a narcotic. but I didn't offer it as food. I offered it as a weapon. I pushed my will into the bond. Get out! I screamed it with my Omega voice, not into the air, but into Cyprian's mind. At the same time, Radu yelled, "Fire!" The UV cannon unleashed a beam of searing white light. I didn't flinch. I wrapped my legs around Cyprian's waist and pulled him close, shielding his face with my own head, and screamed the command again. "I command you to leave him!" The collision of forces was cataclysmic. The UV beam hit us just as the sanguine energy exploded outward from my body. Boom! It wasn't a fire explosion. It was a shock wave of pure violet kinetic energy. It hit the UV beam and shattered it, refracting the light into a million harmless sparkles. It hit the trees, stripping them of their needles. It hit the hunters, knocking them flat onto their backs, and it hit the tyrant. A black shadow ripped itself out of Cyprian's mouth, screeching in agony as the violet light disintegrated it. The ghost dissolved into smoke, then into nothingness, banished by the sheer force of the royal command. The shock wave faded. The forest fell silent. Cyprian and I collapsed to the forest floor in a heap of tangled limbs and heavy breathing. Dust motes danced in the moonlight. I lay on top of Cyprian, gasping for air. My skin was humming, glowing faintly. Beneath me, Cyprian groaned. He blinked. The milky white was gone. The violet was back, clear, bright, and full of tears. "Florian," he whispered, his voice broken. You banished him." "I told you," I panted, resting my forehead against his chest. "I own you. No one else gets to drive this car." A cough broke the silence. Radu was sitting up in the dirt, his UV cannon smoking and ruin beside him. He looked at us, at the way Cyprian was holding me, shielding me even while lying down. He looked at the violet energy fading from my skin. Radu looked tired. The fanaticism was gone, replaced by a grudging, defeated acceptance. "You're not sick," Radu whispered, wiping soot from his face. "You're powerful." I sat up, leaning against Cyprian. Valerius and Soren emerged from the trees, bruised but alive, Niku safe in Soren's arms. "I'm happy, Radu," I said softly. "Go home. Tell the hunters we died in the explosion. Tell them you won." Radu stared at me for a long moment. Then he looked at Cyprian. "If you hurt him," Radu warned, his voice rough, "I won't bring a cannon next time. I'll bring a nuke." Cyprian tightened his arm around my waist. "If I hurt him, human, I will give you the launch codes myself." Radu nodded once. He gathered his men, and they faded into the darkness. A secluded chalet in the Swiss Alps, fireplace roaring, snow falling outside. I tightened the string on my violin. The chalet was warm. It smelled of pine, roasted meat, and alpha. "Papa, look!" Niku ran into the room. He wasn't a feral, starving fledgling anymore. He was wearing a dinosaur onesie and holding a drawing. He looked healthy, his cheeks pink. "Did you draw the pack?" I asked, smiling. "Yes, Big Wolf is Valerius." Niku pointed to a black blob, strong arms wrapped around my waist from behind. I leaned back into the solid marble chest of Valerius. He rested his chin on my shoulder, looking at the drawing. "I think I look more majestic than that," Valerius grumbled, though he kissed my temple. Soren walked in from the kitchen, holding 2 glasses of wine and a juice box for Niku. He kissed Valerius on the cheek, then offered me a glass. "Cyprian is on the phone with the council." Soren sighed, sitting on the rug to play with Niku. "They are terrified of him. He is rewriting the laws. No more hunting fledglings, no more debt slavery." "Good," I said, taking a sip. The front door opened. A gust of cold wind blew in, followed by the king himself. Cyprian shook the snow off his coat. He looked tired, but the moment he saw us, the exhaustion melted away. He walked over to me. Valerius stepped back to give him space, but kept a hand on my hip. The triad was seamless now. No jealousy, just a shared, obsessive orbit around their gravity. "Done?" I asked. "Done," Cyprian said. He took the violin from my hand and set it down. "They agreed to everything. The coven is ours." He cut my face, his thumb tracing my lower lip. I thought I saved a vampire kid, I whispered, repeating the words I had thought that rainy night in Bucharest. I didn't know I was saving a kingdom. Cyprian smiled, a real, devastating smile that showed his fangs. You didn't save a kingdom, my queen, he murmured, leaning down to kiss me. You conquered it. As his lips met mine, and Niku laughed in the background, and the fire crackled in the hearth, I realized he was right. I wasn't the victim. I wasn't the debt. I was the music they danced to. And for the first time in my life, I was home.